All right, folks, let's get started. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the February Northwest Gas Association webinar. My name is Connor Wrighton, and I will serve as your moderator for today. Today's webinar brings a familiar face in Jennifer Davison. Jennifer is not only a regular webinar attendee, but she also presented on British Columbia's Renewable Natural Gas Program in December of 2017. That webinar, as always, is available on the Northwest Gas Association YouTube channel, and we encourage you to go check that out afterwards. But today, Jennifer is going to be talking about the CleanBC proposal and parsing out what the proposal means for the future of natural gas in the province. Before we begin, as always, we'll review some basics on how these webinars work. We have set aside time for questions, and we strongly encourage you to ask them as they come up. Each of you will be muted throughout the presentation, so please use the text box to type your questions, and I will interject as needed to introduce those questions. One note, a few of you have asked for call-in details because we had some audio issues last month. I'm always happy to provide those call-in details, but I am not able to control the mute for those who are on the phone, so please make sure that your phones are muted as we move along. Jennifer has agreed to distribute a PDF copy of her slides to those who would like one. To request it, please respond to my email from 10:30 this morning, or just send me an email at creiten@nwga.org. We also have this being recorded, and as always, it will be uploaded to the Northwest Gas Association YouTube page. I'm happy to provide a link for those who don't want to go searching for it. So again, we want to make sure that everybody marks off time to join us in June at our annual energy conference at Skamania Lodge. This year's dates will be June 5th and 6th, and we already have a really terrific slate of speakers, so we hope we'll have a chance to see each of you there. And finally, I just want to introduce the Northwest Gas Association. For those of you who may not be familiar with us, we represent the 6 investor-owned gas utilities operating in the Pacific Northwest, along with 3 large natural gas transmission lines. Our members are in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and British Columbia. Please visit our website at nwga.org for more information. And with that, we will pass things over to Jennifer.
All right, thank you, Connor. Can you see the CleanBC slide up on the screen?
Yep, everything's looking good.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for listening in on today's webinar. We're very excited to introduce our CleanBC program. It is very much targeting climate action, growth in a number of different sectors, and economic and job opportunities for British Columbians. First of all, you may have noticed on the NWGA intro screen my branch being listed as electricity policy. And many people often ask, well, why am I working in electricity policy but then working on natural gas projects? I'm a bit of an anomaly in my group. I focus primarily on working with the natural gas utilities, and our group works with utilities, whether they be electric or gas, and that's kind of why I'm electric but gas at the same time. I work with the Ministry of Energy, Mines, and Petroleum Resources here in the province. I'm just trying to, Connor, I'm not getting a movement of my slides here.
Oh, that's strange. Why don't you maybe click on the tab and make sure that it's pulled up correctly. I'm not sure why that wouldn't move.
Well, I'm not getting anything here.
Let's see. How about the arrow keys?
Yeah, I am. And it's not moving. I'll just do it the old-fashioned way, maybe.
Doesn't seem the clicker is working.
No, my clicker should be working. All right, here we go. So the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Petroleum Resources is responsible for the electricity and alternative energy sectors in the province of British Columbia. Our mandate is to drive innovation and generate new energy sources, but doing so in a sustainable manner and supporting all stages of clean energy development and adoption. It is only recently, in December 2018, that the province released its CleanBC plan. Now, this plan is aimed at reducing climate pollution, but also creating more jobs and economic opportunities for businesses, communities, and members of the public. The plan was developed as a pathway to achieve the province's legislated climate targets of reducing GHG emissions by 40% by 2030. So first of all, by the numbers, CleanBC by the numbers. Our target is 18.9 megatons, and that's legislated by 2030. 4,000 gigawatt hours of electricity over and above the currently projected demand growth. This electrification is equivalent to increasing our annual energy consumption by about 8%. And CleanBC itself is being funded with a full $902 million commitment over the next 3 years. In terms of our legislated target, this is a reduction of over 25 megatons from our 2007 baseline. The focus on electrification is primarily in the transportation and built environment. And the $902 million includes about $105 to $110 million in funding to switch to clean transportation options. And that includes $90 million for a clean energy vehicle program. And of this, we're looking at incentives for medium and heavy duty vehicles, including trucking, port, airport, buses, and marine. With this focus on electrification, we still recognize that achieving this target will require heavy reliance on the natural gas sector. Firstly, with a focus on transportation, we're increasing our supply of renewable fuels by 650 million liters by 2030. That's equivalent to about 170 million gallons. And we're also increasing our low carbon fuel standard to 20% by 2030. Air quality is a big issue in our major centers, primarily in the lower mainland, which includes Vancouver. So we're looking at pilot projects to switch freight trucks to cleaner fuels, including natural gas. As I mentioned, we're creating a heavy-duty vehicle incentive program. We've also been doing a lot of work with the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority. They are conducting a study looking at their drayage fleet and how natural gas can help reduce emissions from that fleet. And part of that work has been to coordinate an advisory council called the BC Clean Transportation Trade Corridors Advisory Council. And this council looks at a number of different groups. We're working with the marine sector, trucking sector, rail, and aviation. And at the provincial level, it's being co-chaired by both the Ministry of Energy and Mines and our Ministry of Transportation. And this group was established on June the 7th of 2018. So we've been working together now for about 8 months. We have a terms of reference, a mandate. We have working groups set up for all the different sectors, and working very closely with our federal counterparts in Ottawa. The Vancouver Fraser Port Authority, the port itself is actually under federal jurisdiction. So it's very important for us to work with our colleagues at the Federal Department of Transportation. We're also studying renewable gas targets. Now you'll see I didn't say renewable natural gas targets. These are renewable gas targets. So not only will we be considering renewable natural gas, but also looking at other opportunities for using hydrogen, for example, in the gas stream. We will be making it compulsory for residential and industrial natural gas users to have a 15%, utilities to incorporate a minimum of 15% in the natural gas stream from renewable sources. We're also working with our remote communities. British Columbia has a number of remote communities and Indigenous communities up the coast who are not on the public grid, so they rely primarily on diesel, and we're working with them to switch them away from diesel and to other fuels such as biofuels and natural gas. We're also working with our communities to build up the supply of renewable gas, working to achieve organic waste diversion from different sectors, including agriculture, the industrial sector, and the municipal sector, working with our landfills. How did we get this 15%? Did we just kind of pull it out of the air? Well, a bit of yes and a bit of no. We have 18 megatons that we have to find somehow by 2030. And we had to think about how are we going to do that. So we took a bit of a multi-pronged approach. If we raise our low carbon fuel standard by 20%, and if we implement a zero emission vehicle mandate by 2040, and we have a heavy reliance on electrification, there's a large opportunity for renewable gas and biofuels to help get that 18 megaton number down. So that's kind of where it came from. We also have a CleanBC program for industry. British Columbia is one of the few provinces in Canada that has a carbon tax, and we will be directing a portion of that tax that's paid by their operations. These industrial incentives will help reduce costs for operations, where we have especially trade-exposed industries to help us meet global emission benchmarks. And we'll be doing this by using our Clean Industry Fund to invest some of that revenue directly into emission reduction projects. We're also looking at the upstream sector, how we can reduce methane emissions from natural gas operations. We're aiming to reduce emissions in the upstream production of natural gas by about 45% within the next 5 to 8 years. We're working with our colleagues at the BC Oil and Gas Commission to develop regulations and legislation that we hope to have passed this year. We're also working with our federal colleagues pursuing an equivalency agreement. This is to make sure that our regulations and oversight remain in force from both the federal and the provincial perspective. We already have something similar for our environmental assessments for both the federal and provincial governments, and we're looking at now building upon that to help reduce emissions. As I mentioned earlier, we're also looking to develop a hydrogen economy. Blending hydrogen with natural gas can significantly reduce emissions and give us an even cleaner transitional option when we need them. We'll be supporting deployment of fuel cell electric vehicles and infrastructure, supporting more hydrogen production, and as I mentioned, injecting hydrogen into the natural gas grid. We are busy working on a BC hydrogen roadmap that we hope to have released this year as well. This year is going to be quite the year. It's very exciting for us. For carbon capture, utilization, and storage, we're also looking to develop a regulatory framework for underground storage, not just for the natural gas sector, but also for direct air capture. So we have a number of different things going on, and a lot of new programs coming out and a lot of new legislation coming out. But as you can appreciate, this is all going to take time. We're just starting to look now at how to fit all the pieces together. We need to know who's who in the zoo, who is going to be part of developing this target, what kind of framework are we looking at for natural gas moving forward in a heavily electrified economy. But we want to make sure that natural gas has a role to play. And so we're working on these different programs to ensure that natural gas is there when we need it. And that's it. This is our link to the CleanBC webpage. There you can find the full brochure. You can also find highlights. I believe you can also find the speech from our budget, which was on Tuesday. The budget was announced for 2019. That's where we notified about the $900 million commitment. So there are a number of different pieces that are available on this website, and if you have more information, I would encourage you to have a look. Or you are also more than welcome to contact me directly by email or telephone, and I'll make sure that Connor gets a copy of this presentation so you have the contact information. I want to thank you for letting me speak with you today. I know everyone's very busy early in the new year, and I look forward to any questions that you might have.
Sure, thank you. This is a really terrific presentation, and I think it's really topical, not only for our British Columbia members, but also for the rest of us here in the Pacific Northwest. Often things start in British Columbia and make their way down into policy in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. So I think this is really topical for our entire region. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I'm curious, I guess I'll ask the first question. I have another one here, or a couple more here. But you mentioned that there was some carbon capture elements to this. Is that actually capturing carbon from the atmosphere, and what is the technology?
That I'll have to you. I'm not as familiar with a particular option, but I know that we're looking to develop more carbon capture and storage, not just for natural gas, but for many different sectors. But I can definitely follow up on that question for you.
Sure, it'd be a very interesting technology to keep an eye on, especially if BC is going to be taking a leadership position there. Secondly, let's see, we got a question here. Can you speak to any collaboration that British Columbia is going to be proposing with other provinces or with Washington and Alaska?
Definitely. We can't do this without everybody else. We know that. The work I'm doing specifically around the renewable gas target, I'm on the phone constantly with colleagues in California, in Washington, and Oregon, my colleagues back east in Ontario, Quebec, even Nova Scotia. Have not been working closely with anyone in Alaska, although I know that my colleagues in the upstream division do work closely with Alaska, working very closely with the federal government. So this will only happen with collaboration.
Sure, thank you for that. The second question is actually a request. If we could just move back one slide so that everyone can take a look
Hold on.
at the website address you have there.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you for that. As always, I will give folks just another minute to enter whatever questions you're interested in. In the meantime, I want to thank you again, Jennifer, not only for taking the time to do this for us today. This is your second time doing it, so really appreciate that, but also for being a really terrific contact for us in British Columbia. A lot of really interesting things happening up there, and we really appreciate your time to help us make sense of it.
And thank you very much, Connor, and I'm more than welcome to help answer any follow-up questions, or if anyone is looking for a contact in another part of government here in British Columbia, I'm more than happy to help them find that contact. So please consider me a resource. I'm more than welcome to chat with anybody about our programs.
That's perfect. We have one more question for you here. Well, it looks like we have a few questions just come in here. So let's see. What steps are you taking to bring more renewable natural gas into production and to reduce supply constraints?
We are working very closely with our utilities, primarily FortisBC, but also Pacific Northern Gas. We have legislation in place which allows them to build their supply and to recover the cost of building that supply from ratepayers. So we have a very close working relationship on renewable gas and renewable natural gas. I understand that Fortis has put out a request for expressions of interest to find out what's out there across Canada and across the United States. And we've been working closely with them on that, and also trying to figure out ways to make it easier to acquire renewable natural gas, whether that be regulatory work, whether that be just education or promotion of renewable natural gas projects. It's been a lot of the work. You know, the utilities do the bulk of the work, and then we just take the credit work. But we do work closely with them on that.
All right.
And what was the second part of the question? Sorry.
I think there was just a piece about reducing supply constraints, but I think you've got that. So we will move on here. I've got another question, and I'll read that. Which is there a CCS facility under development in BC? Forgive me for my not quite sure what a CCS facility is, but I'm hoping that you might.
That I will have to follow up with you.
Okay.
I will talk to my colleagues and get back to you on that.
Perfect. I appreciate that, and I'll send that out to our group here once we receive that. What are your plans for, I believe, energy efficiency integration into your goals and activities?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
What are your plans for EE integration, energy efficiency, into your goals and activities?
There's a huge component for energy efficiency programs. The focus of the real transition in the built environment. So there are a number of different programs that fall under that to help support transition to cleaner burning fuels for the built environment. Also a number of DSM programs and incentives for both residents and builders. So if you have a look at the CleanBC link, there's a big section just on energy efficiency that you may find of interest.
Perfect. And how do you, next question here, how do you extract extra hydrogen from the pipeline?
You're asking the wrong person that. I don't know. I'm not an engineer, and I don't work on that aspect of operations. I would highly recommend that you contact FortisBC and talk to them about that. I know that, Connor, you probably have some contacts that you can share to direct that question.
Yeah, happy to do that with any follow-up questions afterwards. We got one more here. This is a big one. How will this impact the carbon tax in British Columbia?
Well, the program is basically being funded by the carbon tax. That's why we have it. We've had it now for a number of years. It goes up by about $5 every year. I think the maximum we're aiming for is $50. And but with cleaner operations, of course, that means less carbon tax will be paid. So there has to be a balance between the revenue that's supporting this program and the end goal of the program to reduce carbon in the first place. So we haven't quite figured all that out yet. My colleagues at the Ministry of Finance are busy working on how that will all come into play. The objective of this CleanBC is really to do it over the next 3 years. So over the next 18 to 24 months, we're trying to iron out all those details. And it's a very good question, and people who are a lot smarter than me will figure it out for us. Okay,
well, that's the last question I have. Again, I want to thank you. I know we may have a little bit of follow-up to do here, but I think this has all been really, really helpful. So thank you again. For the rest of you, as well as for Jennifer, hopefully we will have you back for our webinar in March. It'll be the third Thursday in March, and we will be sending out details about that here shortly. So thank you again, everyone, for logging in, and thank you again to Jennifer for taking the time to do it.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody.